Good morning, evening, and afternoon, everybody. Check it out, check it out. We have a deck tech for Naya Burn. What's Naya Burn, you ask? It's only one of the most savage decks in Modern. This deck will do 20 damage to your opponent before they can cast their Esper Charm. This deck will win you a lot more matches than it will lose you. I'm going to go through it with you guys real quick. Let's see here. Let's begin with the mana base. What we have here is one of the least expensive mana bases in Modern. And that's because we're running 4 ofs, Wooded Foothills, Windswept Heaths, and Bloodstained Mires, all of which grab our Shocklands with no difficulty. We have 2 Sacred Foundry, 2 Stomping Ground, 3 Mountains. So the only awkwardness that comes up in this mana base is sometimes Windswept Heath late game cannot grab anything. That's far from ideal, I'll be the first to admit, and if a player with a freer budget than mine were building this deck, I might suggest looking into Arid Mesas or some other red-producing fetch and bringing the number of Windswept Heaths down. With that said, the deck runs like a dream. Getting 2 Windswept Heaths in your opening hand is not a problem. Nothing like that will slow you down. So, just something to take into consideration. Moving on to the 1-drop slot, aka almost the entire deck, Goblin Guide is an indispensable card in this strategy. A 1-mana haste 2/2 with a very slight downside. Honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about Goblin Guide's downside. It rarely ends up coming to bite you. Moving right along, a 2 of Grim Lavamancer. Just a little bit of reach that this deck needs because our burn spells are generally going to be aimed at the dome. Having this guy here who can just take cards you've already cast and turn them into shocks is quite good. Alright, now the heart of a burn deck is of course the burn, and for that we have quite a few of these modern legal 3 damage lightning bolt type spells. They go as follows: Lava Spike, Lightning Bolt, let's see here, if you want to get technical, Wild Nacatl, Searing Blaze, and Lightning Helix, as well as Rift Bolt when you suspend it for 1 turn. So put together, that is a preponderance of the deck that is dealing 3 damage at least once a turn. And outside of those, the real weight carriers are Wild Nacatl and Eidolon of the Great Revel. If you're not familiar with this card basically kills people for playing the game of Magic. And in that sense, you're almost... the reason that this card is safe to play in a deck that doesn't have any spells that cost 3 or less, you know what I mean, have any spells that cost more than 3. Every spell in our deck triggers Eidolon. That's okay, because every spell in our deck is doing more than 2 damage to the opponent. Whether cumulatively or right away. Like Goblin Guide will usually do 4 to, anywhere upwards of there. And any spell that we're casting mana on, outside of like Swift Spear, will give us an immediate return of more life than we lose off of the opponent's life total, if that makes sense. All right, so as I said, the main deck is pretty straightforward. It is a linear game plan type of deck. It is an aggro deck, so when you're playing Burn, your general strategy is going to be to go for efficiency of mana tapping, because you want to use every available resource on every turn to attempt to lower the opponent's life total. Once turn 4 begins, you're pretty badly disadvantaged. So, depending on the board state and the opponent's life total, of course. But the idea for this deck is to finish games quickly. Of course, that can't always happen, and for certain sticky matchups, we do have a sideboard, 15 cards. We'll go through that now. Path to Exile. Absolute premium, unassailable modern format removal. Not much more to say on Path. You can read it if you like. It's a Goblin Guide style downside that the opponent gets a basic. In this case, they almost always will get a basic, whereas Goblin Guide, there's a chance they won't. But the removal is just so strong. The exile is relevant. 1 mana instant is super relevant. Core Firewalker, I'm not sure that this guy's the best card for the mirror match or against zoo decks. I need to play with him a little more, so this might be considered a flex spot. Skullcrack, I've seen decks run one of these in the main, one in the side. You generally always want at least one in your 75 for those corner cases. Molten Rain, very good against, off the top of my head, several archetypes. Tron, Living End, Scape Shift. You know, just blowing up lands is a big game in Modern, so we keep that around. Destructive Revelry, another all-star disenchant. I've seen the Avacyn Restored Ancient Grudge, you know, that flashes back for green and casts for, I think, one red. I prefer Destructive Revelry. It shocks them, and it does what we need it to do otherwise. Deflecting Palm, if they're sending truckloads of damage at your face with the Goyf or, you know, some other large threat, a large guy, this will deflect it. And then we have a second Lightning Helix in the board. Mirror match, aggro, what have you. Just when we want to remove something and gain some life. So as you can see, it's a pretty cohesive package. We have a lot of tools at our disposal to bring the enemy to 0 life before they can ever rue their decision to play, you know, whatever 4 mana or above spell it is that's sitting languishing in their hand. As you can tell, I get a kick out of this deck, and I hope that you will too. I hope you've enjoyed this deck tech for Naya Burn in Modern Magic, and I'll see you guys in the queues and in leagues, and just don't burn me. Alright, as always, I'm Max. This is Maximus Games. I hope that you have fun, do well, and crush this Modern season. That's right. Alright, I'll catch y'all later.